About 4 years ago, I was ending my freshman year at college. I'd lived in the dorms with a kick-ass roommate and had a pretty great experience altogether. Towards the end of my semester, something seemed different in the hall of my dorms. We're all still our lively selves, but just walking into the dorms, you get this massively weird feeling of dread. We all wrote it off as the stresses of finals approaching, but something just felt off. Well, one night after studying, I decided to hit the showers so I could wake myself up a bit just for the class in a few hours. Before I keep going, I should mention the layout of our hall and bathroom. Our hall was one of the many halls on a single floor. Each hall had 4 rooms that accommodated 2 people each. The entrance to the halls were massive. They were these huge steel doors with a small window located at one end, and across from it was a bathroom. It seriously felt like it is a prison block rather than a living quarter of a college campus. Anyway, as for the bathroom itself, when you walked in, you were immediately met with 2 sets of sinks, one on the left and one on the right, with massive mirrors facing each other. Then, past that, you had 2 urinals and a toilet stall to your left, and 2 showers on your right. Now, when facing the left set of the sinks, you can clearly see into the showers from the mirror if the door's open, and in the right set of the sinks, you can see the reflection of the shower. The door to the bathroom was identical to the entrance of the hall. There's a massive steel frame with a small window that didn't allow much of a view. The door was propped open with a giant wooden wedge that couldn't be moved unless you're trying to close the door. So to the story, I'm all alone in the bathroom gearing up to go shower. I throw my change of clothes on the right so that way I can just quickly reach around and grab them. Once I set my stuff down, I happen to look up into the mirror and I can see in the distance something almost shimmering inside the shower stall. As I look at it, I notice that it's slowly getting closer. It's like it's jumping furthermost from the furthest layer to the next closest. I'm kind of unsettled, but I don't think much of it other than me coming down from a massive Red Bull, adrenal and caffeine kick. But it starts transitioning faster. It gets closer and I can start making out details, but it's moving very vividly. It's just a dark mass. It looks like it's covered in hair though. At this point, I'm freaking out to the core. So I know that this thing is getting closer in the mirror. I'm pretty much frozen to the spot. As it gets to the 4th layer, I can get the closest look to the thing that I think I'll ever get, and I regret every single minute of it. No, it wasn't hair that was on it. It's kind of like a flowing veil. You can see partially through it, and you can see through the torso down, but it was just solid black. And the face, I can't describe it. It was clearly human, but at the same time, so far removed. There were the eyes. They were black, but definitely glowing somehow. I saw this for maybe a second, but it's burned into my mind forever. Then, the lights cut out and I hear the door slam. It's pitch black in the bathroom and I can't see this thing anymore. I go to open the door but it won't budge. Then, this intense smell of blood hits me. It's out of nowhere. That's all I can remember. I woke up later in the hospital. From what the RA claims, he was on his way to use a bathroom sometime after, and they found me in the shower stall, covered in my own blood. He asked me what happened, but all I could say was, "It saw me," and then I started freaking out. So he calls an ambulance and they get me straight to hospital, while I'm apparently freaking out, so they sedate me. I'm coming around too, and my parents show up, worried sick of course. I asked them what happened to me, and according to the doctors, I had a seizure, but after running all the CAT scans and whatnot, they have no sign of me having one. And not to mention that epilepsy doesn't run in my family at all. I've never had a similar effect today, not hallucinations or potential seizures. To this day, I still can't bring myself to look into the mirror for more than a minute, and just being stuck in a room with one for an extended period of time can cause me to break down. I've been going to therapy for 3 years now because of it. And honestly, I don't know what to think of this. That image is going to be burned into my mind forever. I was about 4 or 5 years old. My parents had just separated. My mom was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had my own room but preferred to sleep in her bed whenever I was staying with her. Our 2 bedrooms were at the end of the hallway, directly across from each other. Our apartment was on the first floor, and I remembered that it was in the middle of the summer and my mom had her window open. Anyway, I wake up in the middle of the night and remembered sitting up and seeing that our cat was sitting in the doorframe of my mum's room. Her door was open and you could partially see into my bedroom. Now this was strange, as our cat was typically always in bed with us. As I was watching him, he suddenly walked into my bedroom and meowed at me. I turned to face my mum and wake her up. It took her about 4 seconds to wake up and ask me what was wrong. We then both looked up into the door frame and there was a guy standing there. He was making his way out of my bedroom. I still don't know how she managed it so quickly, but my mum proceeded to pick me up and throw me out of the window screen. Again, we're on the first floor, so it wasn't like it was a big drop. She quickly followed by calling and screaming to get somebody to dial 911. The police arrived very quickly, and they didn't see any signs of forced entry, only that our front door was unlocked, and that made them believe that maybe this man must have exited the same way. The strange thing was that my mum was sure that she had locked the door that night, actually with a deadbolt in fact. Now about a week or so later, my mum was cleaning out the kitchen and everything when she opened up a drawer to the heater and found a notebook with names, drawings, a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. The police were called again, but all they could do is speculate that he'd been there for a while. My mother-in-law was a very funny and cool woman. She and my wife were really close, and sadly, she passed away when our son was about 4 months old. Flash forward a few years, we lived in an old 1930s era craftsman's house in CA. Our son was about 3 at the time. I was giving him a bath one night and he started looking over my shoulder. Not at random stuff, but like he was looking at something. A moment passed and he asked me why Grandma calls Mummy a funny name. There was a long pause. I asked him what he meant, thinking that he was talking about my mum. He then says, "Why does Grandma call Mummy?" and said her nickname. I was really set back by this. My wife and I never used that nickname. It was just what her mum called her since she was a baby. I asked him what he heard, and his reply was, "The farmer told me." I asked him who the farmer was, and he replied that it was his friend. I tell my wife this story, and later, she of course reduced to tears over the whole nickname thing. We both know that there's no way for him to know this, and it just doesn't make sense. Flash forward to the next weekend, and my son is playing in his room. My wife is already at work for retail stuff, and I'm at home. I hear him start talking like he's having a great conversation. He's saying things like, "Yes," "No, I don't know that," and then laughing. I go into his room and ask what he's doing. He then asked what I was doing. I said, "Who are you playing with?" and he said, "The farmer." At this point, I'm already thinking about The Exorcist and stuff like that. I'm very unsettled. I ask who the farmer is. He says that he left when I come in. So now my wife gets home and I tell her about the story and she gets really scared. We have no idea what to do and figure that we'll have to do something. A few days later in the middle of the night, we both overhear my son saying the following: "Grandma says you and I can't be friends anymore. Go, you're not gonna hurt us." My wife and I are pretty scared now, and we both get up and go and check on him. When we open the door, he's just sitting in bed. I asked him if he's okay and he says yeah. He then tells me that Grandma said that I'm not allowed to play with the farmer anymore, he's dangerous. Now he's never mentioned the farmer again, ever. He's 13 now and doesn't remember any of it. We do though. This happened to my wife's grandma about 15 years ago. Her husband had just passed away about a year prior. She'd been going down to the library and doing volunteering work. That was exercise and socialisation for her. This is in the winter, so her walk back was while it was getting dark. The library closed at 5 and there was some extra work to do and volunteering before everybody actually got to go on this particular night. She turned down a ride home from a friend because she liked to walk. The house is about a mile away through some lightly wooded area in southern Texas, and she's about halfway home when she notices somebody's behind her. He's walking in the same direction and gaining on her, which in itself isn't at all that scary, but he seems very sinister in the way he's doing so. They keep walking and pretty soon he's right behind her. Then he falls into pace, just staying behind her. Now she knows something's up, but she's almost home. She can now actually see the top of her driveway coming up. She leaves her lights on so it looks like there's somebody in there. She just needs to make it another 150 yards, then 100, all the time. She said that he was so close that she could actually feel his breath on her neck. Makes it 50 yards. It happens. Strong hand on her shoulder. Okay, don't turn around and hand over your purse and I won't cut ya. She stops for a second and then takes one big step forward, turns around and shoots the guy in the neck with a .38. The guy then spends the next 5 years in prison, in hospital, and eventually he died of complications. My oldest brother, who's now passed away, was almost a human killing machine. He could spot game that other people just couldn't see. So one day, I was out hunting with him and he used my shoulder as a rest and killed a crow. I mean, heck, I couldn't even see it until it exploded. You rarely missed. So one day we're out fox hunting in the winter. Foxes are very smart animals. In the winter, you sometimes come across them sleeping on top of hills, because the sunshine can actually keep them warm up there. Anyway, we're walking along and my bro says, "Stop, down," and whispers. About 300 yards away is a fox, curled up on top of a hill. He lies down and prepares to make his shot. Just after he flips off his safety, a second before pulling the trigger, the fox basically does a 180 in the snow, still as a ball. Turned out, the fox was a hat. This is in the late 80s and early 90s. I was around 6 or 7 years old. I'm home with my sister, who is 14 or 15 at the time. We grew up in a small town in Texas. Everybody knows each other. We are home alone this particular night, and my folks let my sister babysit me. We always get along due to our age gap. Now anyway, it's about 8 PM in the winter, and the deserts can get pretty cold. So it's dark and we're in the common room, since that's where the TV was. Now at this time, we're watching 60 Minutes or 48 Hours or Die Hard Copy or something. Those 1 hour news pieces on CBS, you know them things. Anyway, this one was a typical story. Guy next door that was quite quiet goes on a rampage in his next door neighbour's house, mutilating and kidnapping people. Now, the thing about our house common room is that the door leading to the backyard was a large glass door on the wall of a floor-to-ceiling window. There was nothing but blackness beyond it, unless you had the back light on, which we didn't. This basically means that you cannot see anything beyond it. Now, about 45 minutes into the show, they're talking about the ongoing manhunt for this crazy guy, and suddenly, blam. The front door bangs like crazy. We jump up and scream like banshees. There's dead silence now. The only lights on in the house are in the kitchen, and the slight light from the TV. We started to think that maybe something had blown against the back door in the wind. I don't know, the wind was really strong that day. Well, 2 minutes silence followed. We were just about to declare that everything's safe when we hear the storm door on the outside of our front door close. Shit, somebody had to have opened that door and to be able to bang on the front door like that. We're both frozen in the middle of the room on the floor, where the TV's still on. My sister crawls over to the TV and turns it off. It was an old TV, so you had to turn the metal dial to switch it off. It does so with a really loud thunk. Now, it was just us in a small dimly lit room by the kitchen light down the hall. I do not remember how much time passed with me frozen and my sister scared by the TV, which was now off. We kept making eye contact and looking towards the door. I remember this part vividly. I'm on my knees sitting on my feet and I suddenly turn around to look at the back wall. This is when I hear and can see the back door knob turn. Now the door itself was actually locked, but behind that it was not deadbolted. It rattles slightly as if somebody's gently trying the handle. Neither of us make a sound, just held breath. Then, blam, loud as hell, like somebody's trying to force the door open by jerking it back and forth. The whole wall of the window is vibrating violently, and I can see with each jerk that the door's slightly giving way. My sister suddenly goes crazy. She screams bloody murder. I am still frozen on the floor. She gets up and basically drags me into her bedroom, slams the door, and throws everything that she can in front of her door. Thankfully she remembered the phone. We had to directly dial to the sheriff. We were trying our best not to panic. She just had to hit redial when she messed it up on the phone. It was one of her friends who actually answered, and she tells him in broken gasps that somebody's trying to get into her house and that she needs them there right now. I am so scared I cannot stop shaking. We don't hear anything else until we see the headlights of my sister's friends and her parents driving up to the house. Now we never did find out exactly who was at the door or why they were there. There were no signs of anything happening but a couple of scuff marks on the bottom and top of the back door. Nothing like this has ever happened to me since, but for damn sure, I've never forgotten to lock the doors since. My sister and I were playing outside when a younger and elderly couple was walking by our yard. Our yard had a cemetery in the back, so it was quite a common local attraction for our tourists at this house as it was built in the 1800s. And most of the graves were for children who died back then from flu, etc. There are some really creepy stories from this place, but nothing really lives up to what happened all those years ago. So anyway, we're playing outside and this old couple kept staring at us and pestering my sister about her name. They then approached us and got very close. We were little kids and got terribly scared. We ran inside and told our mum exactly what happened. The following week on the news, I heard a story about an elderly couple approaching a teenage girl, kidnapping her, raping her. It was that same couple that approached my sister and I. My grandmother lives in a very old house. It's from the late 1700s. It's surrounded by graveyards on both sides. I won't go anywhere near that. The other day, my friend who I hadn't seen for months arrives at my house. We're walking along the old cobblestone driveway when he begins to talk about his newfound religion. He starts to regret saying about how he feels so in tune with things, but I start to believe in him. He had always been away at a drug treatment program, and I believe that he experienced some kind of spiritual awakening there. Anyway, as we're talking, my cat walks over to us and starts rubbing against my leg. After a while, I realise that she's trying to tell me something. I follow her and soon realise that she's going to the graveyard. Every time I stop following her, she starts doing the same again as I begin to walk. When we finally get to the graveyard, she jumps up on a gravestone, balancing on the slender part of it, and she's not moving. She began hissing when we try and take her off it. We then realise that the headstone she was sitting on was for somebody who lived and died in that very house. So one day, I was doing the laundry and one of the lights blew out in the basement. The basement is set up so that the laundry room is split from the other side of the basement with a wall and a door. In order to get upstairs, you have to exit the laundry room and go through the other side of the basement. So the light blew in the other part, not in the laundry room. As it was the only light in that side, it was pretty dark. When I finished the laundry room, I had to dread walking through the dark side of the basement. I got my courage up and managed to do so. As I exit the laundry room, I get halfway through the basement and I suddenly hear a loud cackle. Imagine somebody trying to imitate a witch. Now take that image and picture a witch that had been smoking for 50 years. Her voice was much deeper and hoarser. This is what I heard, clear as day, right behind me. I didn't hesitate to bolt up the stairs. I waited until my father got home and changed a bulb. Now I haven't yet heard that cackle since, and I haven't told a single person in the house about it. I grew up in a house on Long Island in the town of Brentwood. It's a quiet town for its location. My dad worked as a taxi driver, which meant that he would usually end up coming home really early in the morning. I would always greet him. So it's a Saturday, I'm watching cartoons and my dad comes in. I run to say hello. My mum hears us from the bedroom and says, "Hello honey, don't go in the pool, it's not ready yet." Me and my dad think, well, it's weird, it's 6 AM, we're not going into the pool, but he brushes it off and he goes to tell me his usual stories of the crazies that he picked up throughout the night. We then realise that it was a Saturday and my mum was at work. It was only me and him in the house. The voice sounded like my mother though. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and my new neighbours come over to welcome us. It was the two mothers, 2 sons, and 2 little girls. We got to playing some soccer, however, the little brunette girl is nowhere to be found. The curious little kid I was, I ran around the property. I find her playing in the woods, a dangerous area for young people to be exploring. She then asked if I wanted to go and play tag with her, but I declined, wanting to get everybody in on the game. The reaction of everybody as I asked them to join us was puzzling. The response that we got from the mum was that we only have one daughter. Turns out that a small brown-haired girl passed away in the pool 10 years prior. The mum also passed away a few years prior due to a heart attack.